Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Blue Baby. Because we're going to Mom's Food, you can expect some shenanigans to happen as usual, and of course when I say shenanigans, I really mean we're gonna be making choices that otherwise don't make any sense. And that's so funny to me, because it's a competitive environment, it's a daily run, so you wouldn't expect for things like this to happen, but I do with how the scoring system works. Of course, we're kinda left in a no-choice position. You just kinda have to do this if you want to get a good score. And of course what I'm talking about is just taking early sacrifice shrooms, deliberately taking damage just so you can go to a harder floor, just because you get so many points for actually going there. And what I think is the funniest thing out of this all is if you could actually go to the dark room on the very first floor, like if you had so much health or if you just found a way to actually get there, and of course beat the lamb at the end, you would actually get more points for doing that than if you just went to boss rush, beat boss rush, and then pick up the trophy at Mom. So not only does this result in a much shorter daily, but also in a much more, I would say, concise daily, because it does allow you to get basically more points by doing so much less in a run, and it practically takes no skill. Of course, when you get to the dark room, if you do go from the first floor, you're not gonna have a lot of items. So if that's a possibility, then of course you're gonna be stuck in a position where you have to basically fight the whole of the dark room with all your base stats. And that can be difficult, of course, but I'm just kind of hypothesizing a situation where you would have enough health, and I would expect you would also be strong enough to actually get there. But this is, like I said, a hypothetical. I don't think it's ever happened in the past, except maybe if you're the keeper. In the keeper's case, if you get something like Mom's Knife, because he gets more of his health back with coins, of course you can kind of stockpile on coins in the very first floor, you can use your swallowed penny, and then you can kind of go to the sacrifice room. But keeper doesn't really come up on dailies that often, and I'm kind of glad, because I can't really imagine what people would do with that particular character if he was actually a part of the rotation. But of course, as the run is going on here, I was kind of focusing on some other things, and especially I was kind of looking for an opportunity to just kind of find a sacrifice room and just kind of go from there. This is something that I've been experimenting in the past, and of course I do kind of change up my strategy just to see what works and what doesn't, and this seemed to be, at least proved to be quite reliable, so I just feel I'll stick with it, because I don't want to be too adventurous on Mom dailies, just because so many things can go wrong. Like if we're gonna bank on finding an Abel's rune or the shovel, there's no guarantee, and obviously that's gonna be the best way to actually get a lot of points, but I feel like the safest way of just getting as many points as possible is gonna be just to kind of stockpile on enough health so you can actually go to the sacrifice room as early as possible. And when I say as early as possible, I mean it. I don't mean like wait to the third floor, but literally if you have enough health, just go to the dark room, because even if you die, you're gonna be contending with the people who actually went to the boss rush. And not only, like I said before, does this result in shorter dailies, which I feel like on a Mom's Food daily is usually a good thing, because you don't want to kind of go through it and be a slog and just be stuck in a position where you feel like you've done everything you can, but still you're going to be left behind. You're just going to have less points than people who maybe did something different. And of course in this case Restock is going to help us out in that regard, like very much. And also the D1. The D1 is essentially going to allow us to duplicate spirit hearts or any ways to generate spirit hearts, and Restock of course is going to allow us to go to the shop and either buy battery charges so we can use the D1 more frequently, or of course buy spirit hearts, because every time you buy spirit heart you get a new one, so you can kind of stockpile on that. And there is a sacrifice room on this very floor, so I was kind of banking on this of working, and it did in some regard, but I think that the way it worked, it was, I would say, a bit more lucky than anything else, but there was an opportunity to actually get there. And the way this happened is I actually went to the shop, I bought Chaos, and I got the Hierophant. Of course, that is the card that gives you 2 Spirit Hearts. So I just kind of duplicated that like 5 or 6 times in total. Of course, that gave me enough health to kind of work with. I went to the Sacrifice Room and kind of played that, and I was able to get to the Dark Room. And of course, because you have the D1, you also have an inherent way to break the game. And this is something I've done like not too long ago, and today the opportunity presented itself, but there just weren't as many battery charges, so I wasn't as committed to doing it. But essentially what you can do is you can spawn a bunch of batteries in a room. And the way you do it, of course, you pick up a battery, you go to another room where there is a battery, you duplicate that battery, or at least spawn another one, and then you go back to another room to pick up a battery, and then go back in that common room where there are now 2 batteries, and you spawn another one, now there are 3 batteries, and essentially you just do that as many times as possible. You go into that room which has the most batteries, and you just kind of spam the D1, and when you actually pick up those batteries, you're gonna gain Shrek bonus, and in the end, of course, that's gonna give you a lot of points for consumables. And in this case, I had 3 battery charges in total, and I just kind of spent like 15 to 20 minutes doing it, and I got like something like 2,000 or 3,000 points just from doing that alone. So I wouldn't say it was worthwhile, but it was definitely a way to get just a little bit more points. Like, I definitely didn't expect to be in the top 3 on this one, just because, of course, some people like found restock, and then you find a Steam sale, maybe you find a D1 and a 2 of diamonds or something like that, and that allows you to have an infinite combo of money. And of course, when you have that, you can go to the shop and you can pretty much buy every single item in the game. And of course, that allows you to go to Shoal, then of course you can use the Sacrifice Room, you can use the Forget Me Now, you can use the Clicker to get rid of your item penalty, and all of those things kind of add up together. But I just wasn't feeling that, like, maybe, you know, that was an opportunity. But like I said, I just want to do this in a streamlined fashion where it's not going to take me too much time, but where also I'm going to be able to get a decent score and at least rank in a relatively good spot. Like I said, I'm not ranking for the top 3, but something like the top 50 sounds about right to what I'm actually planning on actually achieving on this daily. And I feel like that's something that's kind of important to keep in mind. Like, of course, I could always just quit the daily, but that's not really my style. But you just kind of have to know what you're aiming for. And, you know, depending on just what you want to do, like breaking the game when you have restock and a 2 diamonds and a D1, it's not really difficult, right? It's going to be something that it's just going to take a lot of time. So if you feel like you're not really willing to invest that, I don't feel like that makes you a worse player or even a bad player at all. It just means you're a player who doesn't like doing that kind of thing. And I feel like that's very fair. And I feel like because of that, we can't really be looking at individual scores when we're comparing one player to another. We kind of have to look at an average, long-term scenario, and of course, whenever our players are stuck in basically the same position and how they act, of course, how much damage you do, how well your mechanical skill is, what your knowledge is like, and things like that. Obviously, it's not just about if you're gonna take the time to do it, it's actually if you know why you're doing that thing in the first place. Maybe that was a bit convoluted, but you get what I'm saying. So this is the part where I start to break. Basically, I spend like 20 minutes just kind of juggling those 3 battery charges, and then I go to the lamp. And with the Algiers rune, I figured I could take him on in a relatively safe manner, but for some reason there's like a glitch in Afterbirth Plus where it doesn't show you where your shield is gonna run out. Like, usually it blinks, but sometimes it just doesn't, and it just kind of ends. And I took damage for that reason. I was kind of too close to the lamp. I took like 3 or 4 hits in damage in total, but that's not that big of a deal because we also had the Sacrifice Room, and of course that kind of added on top like another 12 hearts hits of damage. And we ended up ranking in a relatively decent spot in the 38th place. No, nothing too bad, nothing too good, obviously. Like I said before, I obviously expect some people to have scores in the 50,000s just because of the opportunity and just kind of what this run presented. But I feel like in the end it was a good daily for what it's worth. It was definitely like a difficult one. The run doesn't give you a lot of good items, but if you know what you're doing, at least in terms of breaking or at least in terms of when you decide to go to a particular floor or a particular room, I feel like it's not gonna be too bad. But if you try to kind of duke it out, go to boss rush, and if the run doesn't really give you any good items in that 5th and the 6th floor, you're gonna be struggling. And I feel like the people who went that path in this particular case are really gonna be the ones who are not gonna find this daily enjoyable. And obviously that's okay, but that's just something that happens sometimes. It really does depend on your decisions, and that depends, of course, how your run goes. And I feel like in the end, what's most important is that I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.